Welcome to the 2024 edition of the Indegene Digital Summit and this session on unlocking generative AI's potential in life sciences beyond productivity and efficiency. My name is Tarun Mathur, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Indegene. And today we're going to talk about generative AI use cases that go beyond what we normally see in the use cases with most of our pharma customers today. In our industry, we've seen rapid growth of generative AI use cases that usually center around efficiency gains and productivity. And we've seen these transform business processes from that lens. But the true power of generative AI comes beyond those kinds of use cases. We're looking beyond making things faster. We're trying to reshape experiences, and we're trying to explore these additional limits that what the state-of-the-art generative AI brings us. So we want to see if we can use generative AI to bring long-lasting value for organizations in the life sciences sector. So today, I'm very honored to have a distinguished panel of experts with me. I have Edwin Erkins, who is a Chief Digital Technology Officer at UCB. He's an industry leader in crafting business-aligned digital technology strategies. And I'm very honored to have Hisham Hamadeh, who is the Senior Vice President and Global Head of Data Science and AI at GenMab. And he brings a wealth of knowledge and experience in data science and integrating AI into life sciences. So welcome, gentlemen, and it's a real pleasure to have you here. For the audience who's attending this, please feel free to drop your questions into the chat box at any time. Yeah, Edwin, I'd like to start with you. So when we're looking at use cases within the pharma enterprise, the life sciences enterprise, we see ROI frameworks for looking at things from a productivity lens. Have you thought about how we can look at use cases beyond productivity and how the ROI framework for those may be established, and maybe talk about some of your insights in looking at the longer term ROI potential of generative AI?
Yes, absolutely, Tarun. Obviously, it's very tempting to just focus on the productivity initiatives, and we do, but the more confidence we get on those, the more we start looking at the transformational ones, as we call them, especially in our early research and then development. We're starting really to focus on things that we want to achieve anyways, but wasn't possible with the technology that we had at our hands in the past. So in research, the holy grail is de novo therapeutic module generation, which we're probably getting much closer to now. Generally creating more insights into human causal biology, pathobiology, and in typically in development, there's never enough focus on expediting evidence delivery, and the ROI on those is very clear, right? It's in all those areas, it's very clear, and it's directly linked to the business objectives that we have. And we're far from getting there, but I think we start to believe that beyond and in combination with other technologies, Gen AI can definitely help.
Yeah, great. And Hisham, I'll ask you the same question. And I know that at GenMab, you'd started this initiative with OpenAI called AI Anywhere, and are looking at these new experiences that are Gen AI enabled. Maybe you can give us some insight in terms of what you've seen from that work.
Yeah, thanks, Tarun. I'm happy to be here and participate in this exciting event. I recall my colleague, Thierry Klein, who's the president of Bell Labs in New Jersey, said we're on page 2 of chapter 1 on this journey. So we're very, very early on. And we at GenMab are indeed intending to maximize the value of an AI. And I know we're talking about Gen AI, but we're really going after all the flavors of AI, because that didn't start 3 years ago. And so we're trying to embed it in everything that we do. And you mentioned the AI everywhere. We do have a focused effort in discovery to use protein language models to apply to specific data that inform not only enhancements of characteristics of known antibodies against known targets, which is where the field generally is, but also to address new targets and new antibodies using these approaches. As my colleague also talked about in clinical trials, which is a prioritized area of focus for us, as I'm sure a lot of other companies. The team is working with urgency on multiple catalysts in order to accelerate the time it takes to conduct a study. And some of these include implementing algorithms to identify appropriate countries and sites for a given trial. Others, and this is where GenAI would shine, is how does one use this technology to author robust versions of trial-related documents, including narratives, protocols, CSRs, etc. We're also focusing on the arguably not sexy pieces in all of this, and that's the data foundation for all of these AI models to work correctly. And so we're thinking about the how we structure the data differently so that not only people can access it with the right credentials, but also AI and specifically agents. You could also imagine some of the things that one could do once the medicine is on market to become extremely sophisticated with understanding the patient, understanding the physicians, and be able to turn those into insights that really align with bringing the right medicine to the right patient at the right time. And so I'm super excited about what we are doing, but also what is happening as a collective in the community of life science companies.
That's pretty interesting. And you mentioned data foundation in there. So I'm wondering, do you see, or what do you see as kind of the rate limiting steps, if you will, towards adopting GenAI for these more sophisticated use cases? Do you see that we're having challenges today in bridging the gap between the data that's available to us and GenAI's ability to use them reliably? Or do you see other, just the state of the art of the models isn't quite there yet? Do you see any sort of technology or infrastructure bottlenecks in the adoption of these more complex use cases?
I wouldn't call them bottlenecks, but I think there's a new light being set on how important data as a foundation is. We've always known this, but the urgency by which people are having to execute on it, because they're realizing if I have to participate in this new economy and weave Gen AI into what I'm doing or other flavors of AI, I need to be ready. There are some ingredients. This is not magic. And so there's kind of more motivation to focus on this. And I would say companies, small and large. And what also has changed is the volume of that data, the diversity of the data, what one is able to get their hands on, both data behind paywalls, maybe proprietary data internally, but also the volumes of data that are just available in the public domain. How am I able to absorb it, get my hands on it? Because unlike the previous state, I'm having some real horsepower in terms of the new flavors of AI that can actually, for the first time in a long time, allow one to get their hands wrapped around the volumes of what's available out there and make some sense of it at the end of the day.
Great. And Edwin, may I ask you the same thing? Have your organization been similar to that it's you have this larger influx and diversity and maybe a bigger stream of data coming in, but kind of the state-of-the-art models have a really high potential. It's just a matter of keeping up with the Joneses. Well,
yeah, I had to smile when Michel was just explaining that. It's nothing new, right? But suddenly, I think there's a sense of urgency, and there's also a realization that you can't do it alone, and that you have to, collaborate, work in ecosystems. And then obviously it's not so easy, because how do you trust other data sources? How do you qualify it? How do you make sure you don't buy it twice or three times? Where do you put your data, and where do you combine internal and external data? But these are not necessarily new questions, but suddenly everybody wants to be part of that discussion, right? Which I think is creating a nice dynamic, frankly, because I think data is taken much more seriously than it ever was, and that's like Hisham said, that's a prerequisite to getting getting AI to deliver the results we expect from it. But that's nothing new. But I see positive things happening.
And actually, you mentioned the trust factor. I'm wondering, just from the use cases that maybe even the ones you've been actively worked on today, productivity or not, but have there been some sort of interesting approaches towards establishing trust? Because it seems to me the adoption of use cases, whether it's today's world and we're looking at these efficiency gains, or tomorrow's world where you have experiential transformations, ultimately the adoption is dependent upon establishing trust. And so I know different groups have different ways of how they actually tackle the evaluation or the trust building of using this technology. I'm wondering if, we'll start with you, Edwin, if you've seen that in your work and have some insights into that, and Hisham, I'll ask you the same thing afterwards.
Yeah, it's difficult to make a general statement on that. Right? It depends how specific the data set is, how do you trust the data. But for example, in toxicology, we now use bots that use our own data that we trust, right, to find data in every corner of the company that is there, but was never really at the fingertips of the single person. Creates results that are beyond expectations, but also highly trusted. But again, I mean, so far, I think we're not working with automated agents, right? We work with people in the loop, but that's probably a matter of time.
Yeah. Hisham, has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, I view it as, there certainly needs to be trust in the source of the data, especially when you're trying to bring data en masse, the fidelity of the data, it's been mastered, et cetera. But I take it back to, what are you trying to do specifically, and what specific data set is relevant to this question? I'll give you the example of maybe the basis of approval from the FDA website. This is basically the source of truth behind what drove kind of a medicine to come to market. And then you have derivatives of that in the form of publications, et cetera. And one needs to make a decision: what data am I going to use for training, or for a given model? If I'm going to use AI, am I going to use the literature? Am I going to use these first order sources of truth? And this is where, if one is not careful in choosing what data to train and rely on, one could be really misguiding some of their effort. And so I view some aspect of trust, but I also view some aspect of fluency in what that data will be used for, and what data specifically what version of that data do I need to take in to build that capability in-house.
So then, kind of writing with what Edwin had mentioned, the human in the loop factor of it. So do you see some of these business processes transforming where those types of mission critical, I would call it pre-processing steps, that curation of data is actually done by human factors in the transform business process, and then it finally feeds into these more agentic workflows? Are you seeing those kinds of business process evolutions?
Mm-hmm. I would say that's the goal, the aspiration. I think it's taking time for us to get our arms around what do we want to do, what are the data needs for said projects, and then it's very much a combination, primarily driven by people at this point, because you have the institutional memory, you have kind of a holistic view. That will be helped undoubtedly by AI and agents over time.
Got it. And I guess that feeds into the next topic I want to bring up, and Edwin, I'll kind of turn over to you, is that change management has been, actually, in my conversations in the past few months, been the number one theme. Earlier on, it was what LLM are you using, what platform, inference costs, those kinds of things. Today, conversations are much more around the change management and the pragmatic considerations. What is a business willing to do? versus what can be done. So and now if we start thinking about these longer term use cases that go beyond productivity and efficiency, potentially actually disrupting business processes versus evolving them. So I'm wondering from your experience and insights and maybe your recommendations, if companies are planning and thinking about the longer term ROI and change management, what have you seen from that side?
Well, everybody's experimenting, right, and creating scenarios. But just to react to this very topic of agents or humans in the loop, frankly, I find it easier to get people enthusiastic about AI and specifically Gen AI with people in the loop, because it gives the comfort that they're still in control. Whether that will be the case 5 or 10 years from now, that's a different question, and I don't know. But I also always keep a scenario where actually quite a few things will not have a human in the loop, and may actually be better. Right? There's many processes where, especially if it comes to data integrity, we have still too many people in the loop causing issues. Now, that's not necessarily a popular statement, and it's not necessarily the truth. But it's an interesting debate to have. So the question is really, what are the parts of which processes will we move to full agents, basically autonomous agents first, and which are the areas that we always want to keep humans in the loop, right? That's the question, and I don't have the answer, but it's an interesting topic to start thinking about. For the rest, change management, it's like any change management, right? The only difference here is that we don't really have experts, right? Everybody should be a little bit of an expert, and therefore, besides the strategic investments in AI, the tactical ones, we also invest in getting everybody familiar with it, play with it, use it, whether it's Copilot or other things. We try to make it as democratic as possible, and at the same time, we build the corporate infrastructure to make it easy to experiment and then also scale up. Because I think I don't want everybody to invent the wheel themselves. So we have set up a central hub. We call it the GenAI hub, a central multifunctional team that helps people get started and connected. We have a GenAI platform, which basically in the background it takes care of an orchestration layer. We call it Sky, SKAI. We've branded it, and it basically runs the background. It's a large language model agnostic, so it makes it fairly easy for all kind of people to play with it. And on the user side, we also have standardized the user interface, so it's fairly easy in UCB to start an initiative and play with it, and if it's successful, scale it and publish it to other people. So, but at the same time, we don't want everybody to run their own toys. So we're really trying to focus and do a few things well. So change is really happening on, getting everybody a little bit of experience, focus on a few things and do them well, and then the change, the real change, I think, will be the scaling, and we'll make sure that on some of those topics that or some of those cases that are really successful, make sure we maximize them, and that means that everybody will have to use them. I think a few obvious one, an obvious one is document writing, medical writing, for example. That will be a no-brainer, right? We expect everybody to do a first draft when it comes to with the Gen AI, when it comes to medical writing. But that is change.
That's interesting. So this hub, it spans the enterprise across all the business functions, and
Yes.
it so the hub is providing not only a governance around the kind of core infrastructure enablement, but so then are they also doing some of the use case evaluation or guidance in there? So they're basically helping. No, so here's the tools.
Yeah.
Let the business functions do the ROI on their own.
No, we want to really split the governance with the enablement. So the hub we created is to enable, to make these use cases successful. The actual decision of the use cases, we ultimately do them at the executive committee level.
Interesting. Okay. And Hisham, is that similar at GenMab, or have you also put together as kind of a centralized enablement function and maybe separate that from the governance of conducting this kind of innovation work?
I mean, this is a very poignant question. You see themes that you've heard from Edwin also. We've been preaching this for a number of years, and we believe as algorithms increasingly find their way into more of our tasks and processes, it's becoming more imperative that people conducting these processes are able to enhance and at times reimagine how they do their job with the advent of technology, and in this case, AI. And so what you've heard before is you leave the decisions on what needs to be made to the business functions, to people who know most about these processes. But we do believe in this idea that every employee at GenMab is essentially an algorithmic leader who is just as comfortable leading AI agents as they are leading people in teams. And it'll take time for us to get there. But if you do believe in this and wish to do this at scale within the organization, which is your question about change management, there needs to be a few ingredients, one of which is not only the buy-in and the drivers from the very top to sponsor the change, the belief and the urgency, because we don't have the luxury of, well, I'll do it in 10 years. The pace of the technology, as all of you know, is fairly fast. And then really set the direction. This is where we're heading. And this can manifest in being weaved into corporate strategies and goals that really prioritize this work. And so you use it from a position of strength. You use it as a weapon rather than I'm trying to play catch up. And provide incentives and expectations on behavior, results, ROI. Number two is really to identify the key priorities and areas of focus one will likely not address as a single entity or an organization every single thing that would benefit from AI or GenAI. And so what are the key things that one is able to do in the next year, the next year after that, the year after that, and then really target the change for those. And that's not something that one can copy and paste. Unfortunately, they're likely somewhat specific to each company during that snapshot in time. And so what are my headwinds? What are my catalysts? And this is where I'm going to focus. What are we trying to enhance and be really good at? Arguably better than everyone else. And for other things, we'll just hang on and learn and implement. And this is where an office of continuous enhancement or transformation centralizing can be very useful to ensure the proper orchestration of all the moving parts, from investments to setting the success measures and tracking all of this. And the third is what you also talked about is the education. And this can take different forms. And so first, I love that Edwin said provision of the right tools. And in our case, we've made some choices. And those could be different depending on the person, because you have a ladder of fluencies across the organization. So for the more novice user, you have a multimodal LLM that can respond to questions, reason, create summaries, conduct analyses. But to the more experienced user, they'll tap into API, create agents that are extremely efficient, not only at conducting certain tasks, but also with the expanding chain of thought, be able to string together several tasks and work through them methodically. And so this is not often a lecturing exercise, but almost like an omni-channel engagement through showcasing applied examples, lots of one-on-ones, deliberate hackathons and tournaments. And so it's really a groundswell around this. And I really do think at this point, for the foreseeable future for life sciences, having a human in the loop is paramount. AI should be a helper, accelerating tasks, but also thinking through options and choices, because it may be offering solutions purely based on statistics, by the way, in a space that people may not have considered. And so take ChatGPT o1, which claims to have a reasoning on par with a PhD, could be very helpful to understand objectives, by the way, set by people, and break them down to chunks of work that need to happen to reach said objective. And so for now, people will have to assess the goodness of the plan and put it into motion. That may change. And so to build on all of this, we've also created what we've called an AI lab within GenMab that engages everyone in the organization to bring in, upskill, not just the colleague who may not have experience with coding or any of this stuff, all the way to the data scientists, and have them work at top of the license to say what you've been doing, 6-7 years ago. You need to think very differently about your job. And so we're on this journey. It's exciting to see what comes out of it.
And actually, you're touching on the next topic I wanted to get your thoughts on for both of you, is that when we look at innovation, especially coming from the functions, there's no doubt that with GenAI being able to unlock the potential of the domain experts is at a new level, right? That's where it really shines. However, some of these techniques to really exploit the state of the art, you talked about chain of thought, there's, tree of thought, re-rankers, few shot, zero shot prompting, all these different techniques for how domain experts can translate that expertise into the machine. It seems like that's a skill set that either you embark on training or you have to recruit and bring in new roles and skill sets. What's been kind of your observations and the kind of reception and the willingness and ability for the business to adjust to this new world and these new skill sets? Have you seen roles being redefined or created? And you mentioned the AI lab as a place to kind of help do the upskilling. What's been kind of the reception and uptake on that? And maybe I'll start with maybe Hisham, you can just follow up since you brought it up, and then Edwin, I'd love to hear your experience of that as well.
The story has changed over the last few years, where today you'd be hard pressed to speak to someone who's not excited about this, who doesn't bring a lot of energy, and who haven't really given it a lot of thought, and in some cases have gone extremely far. The average PhD coming out of school today is actually someone who knows, in the case of life sciences, biology plus coding, and they can go very far, and they do need the combination. And you'll see that happening in companies quite a bit. And that's a good thing. What I believe we also need to do to capture the full potential is say, how do we channel this energy into the priorities that we talked about before? People are really hungry to do something, and I think that the question is, how do you put all of that energy into a place where you actually see a meaningful displacement of time, for example, to achieve a clinical trial in a shorter time period. Maybe the cost basis of some of the things that we were doing before drops. And this is not just one person. This is very much a team sport. And so what is happening a lot today is to integrate a lot of the energy and channel it into and focus it into certain areas that can actually give meaningful top and bottom line dividends to the company.
Edwin, has been a similar experience for you? Have you also set up a kind of an upskilling function, and have you seen that same kind of energy come in from folks who are looking to how can they better exploit the state of the art?
Well, the energy for sure, right? Everybody wants to be in the know on this. Upskilling, yes. in many ways. But I think what really brings it home is what Isham just mentioned. It's a team sport, right? And digital AI and specifically Gen AI, I think the successful use cases, the successful experiments are always team initiatives, and it's very different in my view from, I would say, digital transformations 5-10 years ago, where people could go their own way and work sometimes with an external partner and pull things off. That's simply not possible anymore. You need the legal people in the room, you need ethics, you need, in our case, HR, change leaders, you need the AI experts, you need obviously the subject matter experts. And they start, what I find very fascinating, that they will very quickly learn that that's actually fun, effective, and gets them the results. And if you talk about change management, right, the best is to see the causal link between doing it a certain way and getting the results. And I think people are very quickly learning and adapting a very much more, I would say, integrated approach. And maybe in life sciences more than in other areas, but I think the recipe will work everywhere.
It's interesting because our experience has been something similar. We've seen this renewed energy and enthusiasm, and not just at the individual level, but as business functions have been coming in and trying to drive innovation. But I remember 2 years ago going in when we first started exploring the art of possible, if you will, when ChatGPT had first come out, and we had visited some of our customers and at least showed them relatively rudimentary use cases. But there, it was almost like you'd suck the energy out. You had people actually afterwards being pulled in the hallway saying, "You're trying to kill my job," right? And you actually saw a lot of resistance to change. But I think that has evolved a bit. I think that, first of all, one, maybe people are seeing the writings on the wall that you have to adapt or you'll quickly become obsolete. But also, I think some factors, like both of you had mentioned, these human-in-the-loop workflows and these kind of changes that we're going organizationally, doesn't mean the relevance of expertise is going away. It just means it's being utilized in a different way. And that's where kind of this energy is coming from. So it sounds like both of you are kind of seeing that manifested in your organizations.
Yeah, maybe life sciences is specific in the sense that it's, we only understand 5% of human biology, and we have super complex processes. We have always more data than the human being can absorb. We have always more work than we can handle. So in that sense, maybe we're in a good industry in that sense to apply it. But yeah, I don't see any resistance at this point.
That's great. So this has been a great discussion. So overall, we've seen these use cases that certainly go beyond productivity. They're really being enabled and accelerated at the enterprise level. So both of you have talked about frameworks and approaches that your organizations have done to not only provide some sort of infrastructure that gives some security and trust factors and tooling, but also different mechanisms of the governance around how do you actually drive that innovation, evaluate them, and pick the right battles to fight along the way. And we talked about change management. So we've seen the business's ability to adopt and bring in this kind of technology change. It's happening there. So basically, and that's being driven by the functions themselves. And we've seen these new roles, whether they're existing people who are bringing new energy and new life and a new way of thinking about things, as well as just completely new functions that are coming into the equation as well. But in all cases, it's all feeding towards this innovation trend. So to me, it sounds like it's a very positive and exciting journey, right? We don't see a lot of resistance to change. What we just see is cautious change, but it also sounds like it's accelerating as well. So I think that's absolutely fascinating, and I think for the audience as well, the idea of being able to look beyond having a quick rapid productivity tool and now look at these more complex use cases. This is a great set of inputs for that. So maybe I'll just have some closing thoughts. Maybe I'll start with you, Edwin. So any kind of closing thoughts for audience in terms of how they should be thinking about longer term ROI and what they can do as leaders, what we can do in the enterprises to help put fuel on that fire?
Well, it's important to realize that GenAI is just one of the tools in the toolbox, right? And I think there are many other areas that are where we see technology developing quickly. And it's, I think, the combination of multiple platforms, technologies, and then a new way of working together that's really creating a lot of opportunities, specifically in this industry. So it's Gen AI, but not alone. It's always combined with other, sometimes more traditional technologies, more traditional AI, the quality of data, external collaboration. It's that combination that creates lots of opportunities.
Great. Hisham, any closing thoughts from your side as well?
Yeah. This is an advice not necessarily for a company, but for individuals. You see the pace of acceleration with the frontier models. Even if things were to be put on pause today, it'll take us a few years just to absorb everything that we have in front of us, to just react to it and get something useful out of it. And of course, nothing is being paused. In fact, the acceleration and the competition, which I think is good, is bringing just newfound capabilities that all of us could use. And so the onus is not just to wait for me to be trained and engaged by my organization. A lot of the responsibility lies with each and every one of us to really seek, to want to be upskilled, to actually do a few things autonomously and really try to upskill oneself, either through hands-on experience, examples, listening to podcasts, etc., anything that could help. But there needs to be almost like an innate desire to participate in this revolution and actually try to dispel that this is hype. And the dispelling will not just land on us. It's individuals that think of ways that this technology will change how we do either tasks or processes or whole jobs. And so I just wanted to say this is a responsibility that lies with each and every one.
Now, I think that's a great point. And we're not just consumers of this technology now, but we're also, in many ways, have a responsibility of being creators, right? So we can, as experts, we can tune and optimize these systems. And that's a very different mindset that maybe a lot of us, especially old timers like myself, maybe are used to working with, right? So that's a great point. Thank you for that. So thank you, both of you. This has really been a great discussion. I found it very insightful, and it gives me a lot of not just optimism, but extra energy, if you will, in terms of helping to drive innovation with the adoption of Gen AI, looking beyond what we're doing today and what tomorrow and the next few years looks like. We're tracking towards potentially an AGI future. So what does that mean for us as a business? And the framework you guys have both outlined really helps us plan and think about that direction, right? So really appreciate it. And thank you once again, both our panelists, Hisham, Edwin, really grateful for the session.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.